for later because I know some people showing up for that. But today I just want to talk to y'all, right? If I can just talk this morning and be transparent and be real and just teach a little bit, put a one in the chat, guys. All right, put a one in the chat. If I can just teach, if I can just talk to you guys a little bit and have a transparent moment. And so if you're not driving, right? If you're sitting, if you're in place, make sure you have a notebook. Make sure you have a pen. Make sure that you're taking copious notes because you just never know what's going to be said to inspire you, right? To change. And today I want to talk about winning, right? I want to talk about winning. I want to talk about the champion side, each and every one of you all. Um, and I started this journey 26 years ago. And I tell you, I didn't have a spirit of a champion, right? I didn't have the audacity to win. I didn't have no hope when coming from where I'm come from, having the background that I have, having the learning disabilities that I had growing up. Most would consider me hopeless, right? But I read a book by Barack Obama called The Audacity of Hope. And man, hope is a powerful thing. And so I want you to write down the word win, right? And if you're driving nowhere, you can go back and watch the recording. But if you can't take notes, write down the word win, W.I.N. And I'm going to talk to you about what that word means to me. And so this is going to be very quick, but very impactful. And so let's talk about the W, guys, which is very important. See, the W is your willingness, right? Your will to win. Dr. Eric Thomas wrote a book called Average Skill, Phenomenal Will, right? And so I didn't have the skill set growing up, right? I was labeled slow, right? Some would say my friends, or what you would call friends back then, right? Friends were so cruel when you was in school, would call me slow and retarded and dumb because I had a learning disability. I was dyslexic. But back then, they didn't know what dyslexic was, at least in the school system I was in. And so I just was labeled of having a learning disability. But when I tell you, phenomenal will trump average skill every single time. See, God gave us all the ability to have free will, right? And having free will, guys, is nothing more than making a decision, right? Making a decision. I mean, the unshakable fire inside you, right? That thing that just won't let you quit, no matter the odds, right? No matter what's the cards that are stacked against you. It's that unbreakable focus to be willing, right? To move forward, to push through. And guys, that just comes from your willingness to learn. What's your willingness to learn? Right? What's your willingness to learn the skill set, how to be a better recruiter? Right? What's your willingness to learn the skill set of how to be more disciplined in your daily actions? Right? Your willingness to show up, your willingness to get the job done. What's your willingness to learn the things you need to learn? Right? And so also, what's your willingness to change? Right? What's your willingness to change? And so when you look at that, there's something called the teachability index. Write that down, guys. Write that down. Teachability index. Right? What does that mean? That means your ability, right? Your willingness to learn times your willingness to change. See, that's your teachability index. That shows if you're teachable, coachable, and trainable, right? What's your teachability index? Like if most of you would consider yourself coachable and trainable and teachable, right? Put a two in the chat, right? Put a two in the chat if you feel like you're coachable, teachable, and trainable. If that's you, right? If you feel like you have the willingness to learn, you have the willingness to change, right? And so, but what we find out, like I did, what we find out is most of us are not teachable. Most of us are not coachable, right? So, you know what I'm saying? So let's put your teachability index to the test, right? Most of you are willing to learn because you showed up at 10 o'clock this morning. And some of you have been showing up every single morning, getting the information, right? Because you're willing to learn the information. You want to know, you want to grow, right? But what's your willingness to change? What's your willingness to change? See, I said at the beginning, I said if you were sitting to pull out a notebook, to pull out a pen, so you want the information, but are you taking the notes? See, because I'm willing to learn the information. I'm showing up. But am I taking the notes? Am I willing to change? See, some of you all, hey, I said, get the pen, get the paper out. And some of y'all didn't go get the notebook and the pen. And so if your willingness to learn is a 10, but because you didn't desire to change is a 0, then 10 times 0 is 0. So you're not teachable, coachable, and trainable. See, when I was in this industry, ladies and gentlemen, I was in this industry for 7 years, my first company, maybe 8. And for the first year and a half, I didn't recruit one single person. Right? It took me 4 years to start making money in that company. Why? Because I wasn't willing to change. See, my teachability index was at a 0. I was showing up to every meeting. I was showing up to every convention. I didn't miss a meeting, a convention, anything, a conference call, anything I was qualified to attend, I was there. But I wasn't willing to change. See, a lot of times we say, hey, I want the information. We call our sponsor, right? We call our upline. And we call our accountability partner. We ask these questions and we asking questions and we want to know the information. And then they give us a solution, right? But we don't put no actions to that. We have systems that's put in place. One's a communication system. When people keep asking questions, I say, hey, that's in the chat, right? That's in the chat. The information's in the chat. Well, there's too much going on in the chat, right? It keeps me up all the time. You want the information because you're calling me. I know that you desire to have the information, but you won't join the group. And so your teachability index is still at a 0, right? Because I'm not willing to make a change. We got systems in place, right? We got a conference call. I mean, not conference calls, but Zoom systems. We got meeting systems. We got things that you can attend, learn, and grow, right? And you want the information, but then you won't show up and apply the systems. And so your teachability index is a 0. So guys, what's your willingness to learn times your willingness to change? And see, it wasn't until I started to change, it wasn't until I started to seek out mentorship. It wasn't until I started to read the books, right? It wasn't until I started to actually apply the information and I wanted to change. Until the pain of remaining the same outweighs the pain of change, only then will one change. See, it didn't hurt bad enough for me to change. I wanted the information, I desired to have it, right? But I wasn't willing to make the changes necessary, God. And we have the power to make a decision. We have the phenomenal will, right? We have the phenomenal will. We have the ability to change whenever we choose to do so. All we have to do is make sure that our learning, right? Our willingness to learn, our teachability index to learn is at a 10. But also at the same time, your desire to change, right? Your willingness to change is at a 10 too as well, guys. And so that's how you measure, right? That's how you measure if you're coachable, teachable, and trainable. And so I had to do those things to become coachable, teachable, and trainable. And the I, man, the I, right? The I is for inspire. Man, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, when Felipe came on, right? At first I was like, man, you know what I'm saying? Is my man's gonna get it together, right? And so, and I was just being honest. But man, when he started to talk and he locked in, right? He got focused. He said, hey, don't close the door, right? I have something to teach the people. Close the door. He got focused. He got locked in. When I tell you, man, before he was finished, the tears that started to roll down my face because, see, I understood that he had the will. He had the will. He was willing to learn, right? But he also was willing to change. He found a mentor, and he said David was his mentor. And he said, not only am I learning what this man is doing, he said, but I'm going to make the changes necessary to get the results that he's got. See, he was inspired. So we had to be inspired. And the only way that we can be an inspiration to others is we are inspired, guys, right? The word inspire comes from the Latin word inspire. Inspire, it means to breathe life into something. The last time that I checked, right, in a biblical sense, is when God breathed the breath of life into Adam, right? He was inspired, right? And so we all inspire. We all have that same inspiration inside us. When you inspire someone, ladies and gentlemen, right, you're breathing life in them to change. Right? You're breathing life into their possibilities, into their hopes, into their dreams. And that's why I love this entry. That's why I'm still here, because it inspired me to change. Right? Somebody that was deemed and labeled slow and dumb, right? Didn't supposed to graduate high school in 1994. I graduated high school in 1996. I went to college with it, and my math teacher got me in with a 1.9 GPA. I'm not ashamed to talk about it because who I was is not who I am. Right? Somebody inspired me. Somebody saw me in a grocery store and talked about an opportunity, and I showed up to a meeting at Shoney's, and the gentleman in front of the room inspired me. Right? That was 26 years ago. And I'm still inspiring others today. And so I'll take you back to when I was in elementary school. Fourth grade, being pulled out of my class because I had a learning disability, right? Being put in a smaller class because I couldn't read, I couldn't spell, and I could not write. And that's the truth. And guys, I tell you this, I'm 46 years, 47, 48, I forgot. I'm 48 years old, about to be 49, and I still cannot spell. I'm transparent. I said, could I be transparent and talk to you this morning? I still had the penmanship of an elementary school kid. Now, one thing I did is I learned to read, right? And I would act out because I didn't know what was wrong with me. They had to pull me out of class because I was frustrated, because not because of my learning disability, but because people were teasing me. And I didn't know how to manage those emotions at that age. And so, and I would just act out. I would talk. I would disrupt the class. I would do things that would get me put out of class. And they said, you know what, we got to take them and put them in a smaller group of individuals. And they put me in a special ed class, right? And then I had to go see the school psychologist. And the school psychologist started working with me. And just imagine, I'm in the fourth grade. And she said, I want to give you something. And she gave me a book called The Story of My Life by Helen Keller. Now, remind you, I'm in the fourth grade. I can't read. She said, you're not going to understand the words in this book. She said, but when you learn how to read this book, when you understand this book, she said, you will change. And every day we worked on that book. She said, when you can't pronounce a word in that book, we're going to sound it out together. And she helped me to read that book. And then when I started going to that special ed class, I started taking it seriously because they taught me how to read in that class. And I was inspired to read. See, that story of my life was written by a young lady by the name of Helen Keller, who at 19 months was diagnosed with scarlet fever. And she lost her ability to read, she lost her ability to see, and lost her ability to hear. Imagine that. Imagine before you're 2 years old, you don't have the ability to hear or the ability to see, right? Imagine what that's like. And we have a lot of excuses, right? A lot of things that we say handicap us, but all of you can read, I'm sure all of you can see, right? Most of you all can see and hear. And so when I read that book and I started to understand that book, I was inspired by her. And when she met a teacher by the name of Ann Sullivan, right, at the age of 7, she was acting out, kind of like I was. And I started to understand why the school psychologists want me to read that book. And Helen Keller would act out of frustration, out of emotion, and she would throw things, and she would bite, and she would kick, and she would scream because she couldn't hear and she couldn't see. And still today, it's hard for me to talk about that book because it's emotional to me, because that book took the excuses away. And I was frustrated in the beginning. I was mad. I wouldn't even read the book. I couldn't even pronounce most of the words in the book. You got me reading a book in the fourth grade that's at a college level. But we worked it out. And I started to understand, and she would read the book to me. She said, go back and read it, right? And I learned how to read off of memorization. Still couldn't spell, but I learned how to memorize words. And that's how I learned how to read, right? And so when you look at Helen Keller, she couldn't read, and she couldn't spell. She couldn't read because she couldn't hear, she couldn't see. But her teacher, right, taught her how to read and write by writing images in her hand. See, what you understand is that your 5 senses provoke a thought. And even though 2 of her senses was gone, she still had the ability to feel. She still had the ability to taste. She still had the ability to smell. And they would learn the words of food by writing in her hand and then giving her the food so she could taste it, so she could identify the words in her hand with the taste, and through writing in her hand, because she could still feel, right? She could still feel. So she took the emotion and the feeling and in those senses enhanced. But so what, she couldn't read. So what, she couldn't write. So what, she couldn't hear or see, she could feel. And guys, Helen Keller went on to graduate college, right? Radcliffe College, to be at that, in 1904, becoming the first blind and deaf person to receive a Bachelor of Arts, and went on to write many books. And one of those books was called The Story of My Life. And that book changed my life in the fourth grade. And I realized that my learning disability wasn't a disability. See, I had all my senses, right? The only one I was lacking might have been common sense, but I had all my senses. And so, guys, what's your ability to inspire? Who are you breathing life into, right? Who are you? Whose possibilities and dreams that might be the size of a mustard seed? But God said, if you have faith of a mustard seed, everything is possible. And I know my faith at that time was a grain of a mustard seed. I had 19 jobs. I stocked groceries at grocery store. I worked at a correctional facility. I made milk jugs. I made doors and frames. I did a lot of things before somebody approached me in a grocery store and told me about an opportunity. And that opportunity of network marketing changed my life. See, I was inspired. And so I'm not in this industry for the money, right? I'll take it. I'm not in this industry because of the amazing products, even though that they work. Those things are great. There's a lot of companies with great products. There's a lot of companies with amazing compensation plans and amazing leadership, right? We just happen to have the best. But there's a lot of companies out there that have it. But it's the inspiration, right? It's somebody out there that's like me that had no hope, right? Somebody out there like me that had no dreams, no desires, because they just took what life gave them, because that's all they felt that they deserved, because I didn't have the skill set. The Eric Thomas says that phenomenal will, mm, phenomenal will trumps average skill all the time. See, I was willing to learn, but when I got the willingness to change, because I was inspired, and then my story started to inspire others. A lot of you guys, y'all have everything that you need. Also, the word inspires comes from the word inside. See, it's inside you. See, God breathed the breath of life into man. That's inspiration. That's what the Latin word says. It means to breathe life, right? To inspire. And so if you breathe life into somebody, that means what everything that you need is inside you, right? It's already there. You just got to be inspired to bring it out, right? You got to be inspired to bring it out. And then the last word, the last letter in the word win, guys, is the N. Is the N. And that's for never, ever, ever, ever quit. I've been doing this for 26 years and I haven't quit yet. And I'm not going to quit. And somebody said, well, you know, you're in the last company for 3 years and now you're in another company, right? 19 jobs. Nobody said anything about that. Right? But I'm still doing the same thing I was doing 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I'm still have the willingness to learn. I still have the willingness to change. I still have the ability to inspire others, and I'm still doing that today. Yes, I'm in a new company, but that's not going to be my excuse. Yes, I've been through my warm market plenty and plenty of times. Yes, I've talked to people over and over again. Yes, people see me say, hey, you're doing something else. And I said, man, same game, baby, different jersey, right? I'm not in it for the products. I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for the inspiration, right? I'm in it to inspire others that they can change. And this opportunity allows me a platform to do that. I'm never going to quit, right? When people come to me all the time and they quit, people quit their marriages, man. People quit their jobs, people quit school, people quit stuff all the time. And people come to me and they say, man, you know, I'm gonna quit this business. I say, why are you telling me? Why are you telling me? I'm not quitting. Tell your kids, tell your family, tell your mama, tell your father, tell whoever depends on you. You tell them that you quit because you're quitting on them and you're not quitting on me, right? Because I know that my desires, my dreams, and my goals are not dependent on whether you quit or stay. They're dependent on my willingness, the W, right? To inspire others in the end to never quit. Guys, I don't have to be long this morning. I just want to say something to impact you. Right? I just want to say something that inspire you. If you're inspired this morning to be a winner, if you're inspired this morning to be a champion, right? Put I'm a champion in the chat. Put I'm a champion in the chat. I believe in each and every one of you guys. The champion is inside you, right? The ability to inspire, to be inspired is already there. God already gave you the breath of life. That was inspiration. He was inspired to design us, right? So we can inspire other people to evolve and live a life, a meaningful life, right? A powerful life, an abundant life. I love the first slide. I'm going to end with this. I love the first slide in our PowerPoint. It talks about abundant life. And Bob Proctor, my foster mentor, right? He says that abundance is our birthright. It's our birthright. And you got people right now that want to live a life of abundance, but they're like me, they don't know how. And you, right? All of you, each one of you have the ability to inspire those to bring that abundance out of them. That's what our job is, right? That's what our job is. The product is a benefit. The compensation is a benefit, but the ability to inspire is generational. It transcends past all those things, right? It transcends past all those things. Since the beginning of man, everything we've needed has been right there inside us, right? I wanted to close out early, man. I know I got a few minutes left, but there's a song And if James can cue that song up for me, guys. It's a song I listen to almost every single morning. Right? Every single morning I listen to this song. Because all of you have things that's coming against you. Right? Since I was little, I've been having to fight. I've been having to fight. Keep fighting. We're going to listen to this song, guys. We're going to let it take us out. I love each and every one of you. And I hope I inspired you to find that champion. So this is